Thank you very much. All right. Looks like I have control here. So I want to start before we dig into the presentation itself and just spend 1 minute to thank the companies. We've really seen a lot of people and a lot of companies stepping up and helping out during the current COVID crisis and seen some great deeds by the applicants themselves. And so I really want to call attention to that and thank the companies who have been extremely responsive and really, in many cases, stepping up and looking in the best interest of the public during this time. And at the same time, too, I want to thank the folks on the ANDA program team because we've seen some real heroic work on sort of this side of the fence, too. And that's the folks in the Office of Generic Drugs and the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. And of course, there's a lot of other people supporting the program across the center. But especially in these two groups, we've seen them really understand the importance and jump on the applications. I've seen supplements that were approved in a matter of a couple days. I saw one where the acknowledgement letter was issued one day and then the approval action was issued the next day. And so I really appreciate the fact that everybody is working very hard. So with that, I'll sort of focus back now to the regular program here. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the ANDA program performance and go through some of what the data means and then where we can provide some tips to help you sort of navigate this process. Okay, we're going to walk through some of the key program metrics. We'll provide some tips for success. And then we'll also look at some of the resources that people can use to help better navigate the process. So the agenda will start from the pre-ANDA program, right? This is the inception of the whole thing. We will move forward and cover the entire process from looking at filing to review to approval to post-approval submissions. It starts with the product-specific guidances, right? So one of the big successes of the GDUFA program is the research program and its ability to focus on efforts that directly benefit the review process. One of the most visual outputs of that program is the product-specific guidances. These provide great insight into the bioequivalence thoughts around the product. It also facilitates sort of our ability to bring the program, especially the bioequivalence program, is adequate first cycle around 70% or so of the time. That's an enormous win for both of us, right? The company knows what the target is. Reviewers know what the target is. We'll certainly take other recommendations, but people can see what our expectations are, and we're able to use this to really drive the bioequivalence process specifically to that first cycle adequate. That's one of the key components in our ability to move these applications through the process much faster, and we'll show you a little bit of that later on. We also have had the team sort of break off their efforts into looking at both the non-complex, right, the more traditional products, and then a big push to get better direction out there on the complex products that are a little trickier to work on. Right? And so these efforts are continuing. Take a look at those. It's great insight into what our thinking are. If you have suggestions, certainly other paths to bring that information forward to the agency. One of these is the pre-ANDA meeting request program. So this is something that was formalized under GDUFA 2. It's working very successfully. Right? It's a great way to sort of sound out your path forward for these more complex products and interact with the team so that we all have a better understanding of what the application is going to look like and where some of the key points may be. Controlled correspondence is another opportunity for potential applicants to gain some clarification on the path forward. And what we've seen here is a steady increase in companies using this path, right? Very beneficial tool. Here are some of the reasons that we've had to sort of reject controlled correspondence. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the key is the more effort you put into your controlled correspondence, the more value you will receive out of the program. And sort of to show you what's going on, sort of matching the submission rate, we've been taking the controlled correspondence very seriously. big push to make sure we're able to answer these controls, give you meaningful answers, and try to do it very quickly and sort of corresponding to the record levels of submissions. We've had record level of output, and I really want to thank the people who worked on controlled correspondence 29, 18, and 19 to allow us to set the record last year. So big win for both of us. Also want to look at then some tips for controlled correspondence. Like, please make it easy for us to understand your request. Right? And one of the keys to doing that is to make sure that your cover letter clearly indicates whether you have attachments, the number of attachments, and provide the appropriate background information. Right? Help to clarify exactly what you're looking for, and certainly locking in things such as the reference listed drug, the RLD, even the dosage form can help us give you a better answer, right? And that's to both our advantages. Here are some resources to help better navigate the controlled correspondence process and some of the other sort of pre-ANDA program efforts that are going on. Then we're going to pivot and look at the filing process, right? And by this, we'll look at the ANDA receipts. As you can see, the receipts fluctuate significantly from year to year. We also see fluctuations from month to month and even within the month, with trends being that much of these submissions occur within the last few days of the month. This certainly presents some operational challenges, but the team has been very diligent in working forward and moving those applications through. And I'm going to look at the refuse to file percentage. This is something that has changed in recent years, right? This is a big benefit to the program, right? We're having more communications and interactions during the filing period, right? There were updates to the guidance that helps facilitate these interactions. The filing team's assessment and its checklist is public. Like, you can see the exact same sort of assessment tool that we are using to go through these applications to make sure they contain all of the right pieces. And applicants, I think, are using these checklists to build a better application. So we certainly appreciate that. We are seeing a higher quality submission coming through. And refusing is not what we want to do. And what you'll see here is sort of the impact of the applications. And so there's certainly been a little bit of attention to the drop in the number of submissions, but it's not as significant as people think, because the key, what's being worked on to the disciplines, that number is actually a little bit more stable, right? Because we refuse fewer applications, it means the applications are coming in and landing with the team, right? That means that we're able to start the assessment process, like move those applications hopefully down the path towards approval. Talk a little bit about the impact of refusing applications. Like, this is not the desired state, right? We don't want to refuse applications. That's not helping us meet our mission, right? However, there's a lot of pressure for us, especially in the ANDA program, to follow the procedures, to be consistent, right? Unfortunate, but we have to treat everybody as consistently as possible to be in a position to sort of defend the actions that we take and defend the robustness of the systems that we all operate within. So I want to go through a couple other points and really highlight this. Like, there's nothing in it for FDA to refuse an application. We don't want to refuse applications. It's actually more work for us to refuse the applications, right? We've got to double check everything. We have to have more meetings. We have to alert people that we're going to refuse an application. Oftentimes, these result in disputes. That's a significant amount of effort on our end. And most importantly, for both of us, right, it can delay our ability to bring an application towards approval. And that's what we all want, right? We need those approvals. And we especially need those approvals for critical products. Right? Our mission is to bring high-quality generic drugs to the market. We can't do that if we can't both work together to get them approved. I'm going to provide some filing tips, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but the key is do your homework. It will help us both manage these applications. Now we're going to shift gears and look at the actual submission, right? And invest in a quality application. We can't say that enough, right? Do it right. This will help us both. It saves you time. It saves money in terms of the filing fees, delayed market entry. And one of the tips to help us sort of better navigate your submission is to make sure the cover letter is clear, right? And it tells us what's in the submission. Knowing what's in the submission allows us to assign the submission to the correct team members. Hidden information is a common reason for stress within the team, missed goal dates, and approval delays, right? And so help us mitigate these circumstances. And so here, we'll provide some sort of tips specifically on the submission. When you're referencing what we call the pre-submission facility correspondence, please clearly submit that and make sure it ties in directly to the actual application, right? We want to keep these two documents in alignment. The same set of facilities in the PFC should be matched in the ANDA itself. And that's going to allow us to move these packages forward and reduce the time to approval. Note in the PFC and the subsequent ANDA the priority request, right? If it's not a priority application that you intend to submit, then you shouldn't be using the TFC process. At the same time, when you submit that TFC, make sure you justify the priority request and then repeat that at the time the ANDA is submitted. These will go a long way to help facilitate us processing the application. And also, please note if that application is part of the pre-ANDA program, right? As you already know, there's some extra sort of care and feeding that goes on to those companies. And so if we can figure that out up front, we can start to arrange mid-cycle meetings and those kind of opportunities for the companies that have the appropriate submission. Now, another thing to think about is who's going to be doing the review, right? We call that the assessor. What are they looking for? And let's help to make sure they get that. And so do you want your assessor searching for the data, or do you want them evaluating the data? Consider what we're going to be looking for and provide that. Build a reputation for quality submissions, right? Make it easy for us to navigate the application, right? And convey the appropriate message, right? Show us you have things under control and can submit everything, right? And when you're looking at the actual data, right? Remember, the assessors, they love to analyze data. That's what it's all about for them. So give it to them. Make sure it's completely presented. Don't have any gaps. Use clear labels and figures. Make it easy to read and compare. Make sure your data supports the overall story of the application. Like, we're submitting this drug. We have confidence in it. Here's why we are confident. Make sure that message gets carried over to the team that's making the assessment, right? Link it in. Show us that you know your product. If you're referencing prior communications with the agency, make sure you fully cite any suitability or citizen petitions. Use the appropriate docket number, right? That will help us both be looking at the same information at the same time and using that to sort of help your application move forward. If you're citing a controlled correspondence, again, make sure you have the original request and our response built into the application. And then again, if you've had meetings with the agency, like, reference those, make that very clean. And show us the value for today. Don't reference something that doesn't have value or where you have changed sort of the base of your application after meetings or after controlled correspondence, right? Make it as easy as possible for us to understand you have things under control. If you need to deviate from a guidance, perfectly acceptable, right? There's a lot of value for us to understanding how you're thinking by showing us these deviations, but clearly note that you're deviating. Right? Make it rational. Right? Here is why I think this alternate approach makes sense. Right? Explain through data. Right? Think about your audience again. They're going to want to look at the data. You're making a proposal, back it up with the numbers. Say what you do what you say, prove it, improve it. Right? Show us that in the application. Show us that you know your product. Capture that knowledge. Meet the criteria, right? Oftentimes we're stuck. You haven't met all the regulatory criteria. We're forced to give you a complete response letter. Comply with any requests you get from the team, right? completely address the deficiencies, right? Don't race to get it in. Do it right. And then repeat all of this for your contractors. It's very important to understand contractors have an equal role in your success through this process. So use responsible contractors, especially with the drug master file, some of these other key aspects of your product. Communicate with those, right? Make sure they know your key dates. You know what they're submitting, when they're submitting. FDA shouldn't be the link between these two parties, right? Make sure you know and list all the facilities that are going to be used. And here's sort of a staggering statistic from our friends in the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. 25% of the DMFs that companies are relying on have hidden facilities. That has enormous consequences for our ability to move forward on an application. At minimum, it's going to trigger another amendment coming in. That's going to impact the goal dates. So here's some additional resources to help sort of navigate through that process. Now we're going to pivot and look at the mid-cycle communications, right? This is an opportunity then within the middle of the review cycle for us to communicate some thoughts that we have about your application, provide a little insight into some of the areas that we're focusing on, some of the areas where there may be concern, or simply requesting clarification or additional information to sort of help us move through our assessment. So what you see here is the volume of communications. Right? This is amazing. Thousands of these mid-cycle communications going on each year. Right? This has been a big success as part of the GDUFA program. It's one of the key pieces to us reducing the number of cycles it takes to approval, and then subsequently the total time it takes to approve an application. There's some tips to help better navigate the mid-cycle process. First, learn from your deficiencies. See if we can minimize them, right? Are there lessons learned on one application that you can apply to the next application? Provide complete and timely responses, right? We're going to give you a response time. Try to meet that. If you can't meet that, contact the appropriate people. Right? The goal dates are very important for us, right? And we're constantly sort of monitoring what are we getting from the applicant, when are we getting it, how does that fit with our scheme for moving this application forward within that goal cycle. If you experience any delays on your end, talk to the discipline project manager, right? That's going to be the key contact for you on those. If you don't respond, and this happens, it happens more than we expected, where people aren't able to respond to the IR or DRL. That forces us then to issue the formal complete response letter. Right? Extra resources on our end to make this happen. And then we want to pivot a little bit because a small set of applications, and as we saw earlier, a growing set of applications are eligible not just for getting the mid-cycle communications in terms of the information requests and discipline review letters, but there's an additional communication piece built into the GDUFA program where we will schedule a mid-cycle meeting with you, right? And so this will be scheduled by the regulatory project manager early in the cycle. They'll start to reach out, contact the applicants, schedule this meeting at a future date. And so as you start to get information requests and discipline review letters, you can send the RPM sort of your timeline on when you think you'll be able to respond to those. Another thing that you can do is send questions, right? There's no obligation for us to respond to those questions, but we will make a good faith effort. If you give us a reasonable question, shows you've done the homework, right? You provided some of the appropriate background, not just where do I go, FDA, but here's what I'm hearing, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I think you want. Does this sort of help you to better understand my application? Then we will make a good faith effort to try to address that during the meeting. The key, though, is giving us plenty of warning about those types of communications. So again, there's a link for some more information about that sort of facet of the program. Now we'll focus on the end cycle communications. What you see here are the complete response letters, right? Now a little bit of history, even before the complete response letters were sort of fully implemented through GDUFA 1. And you see, again, like several other aspects of the program, big increase in the amount of communications. And this shows you how the applications are flowing through the program. right? This is happening at a much better pace than it was historically. The complete response tips, right? Let's take advantage of this. Again, learn from your deficiencies, right? A lot of overlap with the early communications. Don't provide extraneous information. If we ask you a simple question, can you provide data point X? Give us that. Give us X. Don't give us the entire alphabet. If you send more in, we're obligated to look at it, right? And that look may cause us to ask other questions, right? And so give the reviewer exactly what he or she's looking for. Be accurate. Be consistent, right? Your response should tie into that bigger story of the application that we're both working through. Be timely, right? Help maintain our momentum. Right? People sort of don't understand how the teams work. Team works on an application. When they have a formal response that goes out, right, that team now has to grab a new application and start working on it. So the quicker you can respond, the more we can maintain the momentum, the energy, and it's much easier and better for the team. Get those responses, get them back into play while it's fresh with the reviewers. Use these tips to hopefully close out your next cycle with an approval, right? That's what we all want. And then we'll expand a little bit because we want to highlight a couple other aspects that people can sort of utilize better to help the flow of their application. First, be very focused on the timing of your changes, right? And unsolicited changes from the applicant or even from your drug master file holder have significant consequences, right, to our ability to move forward with the application. Be diligent. Watch for the external changes, right? The reference listed drug could make labeling changes. United States Pharmacopoeia could be updated. Those are the type of changes you need to be on top of. Submit the updates to your application as soon as those changes are made. Don't wait for the invitation from the program to do that. Jump on those. Right? The faster you make that change, the better it is for you. We can't say it any easier than that. People oftentimes wait for us. Don't wait. Send it in. Right? And then if you have a tentative approval and want that to be converted to a full approval, right, send those in 3 months prior to that anticipated full approval date. There's some resources here, and really the key, instead of providing a bunch of links, if you need to navigate your application, the best resource is Regulatory Project Manager, right? If you can't reach the project manager, right, they're off on other activities. We post the team leaders and the supervisors. All of that's available. You should have no trouble sort of working through the regulatory project management structure. These are the people who know best about what's happening with your application and what the impact would be for changes and things of that nature. So use them, right? That's their job. They are your champion for your application, and they are dedicated to moving these applications forward. So I won't go through all of these different points, but here's where there's more value in talking to the project manager, right? There's different time frames where it does make sense to reach out to the project manager. And in many of these cases, the project manager will be proactive in reaching out to you and say, hey, it looks like we're going to have a miss date. Here's what's going on. Here's when we anticipate being able to provide sort of the response. At the same time, there are a couple cases where it's very limited value to reaching out to the project manager, right? Oftentimes we get people asking for the status of their application a couple weeks after it was received, right? In normal circumstances, we're not going to have that information right away, right? And so be conscientious and respectful of the project managers, right? And try to use them when it's appropriate. They will work with you. They will be your advocates within the process. Then, of course, right, the approvals. This is what everybody is racing to get, right? We want these, you want these. What we can see is the program really has taken the ability to process the applications to that next level. The approval numbers are certainly a great reflection of the success that we have. And, you know, it's great. We've built a program. We can approve lots of applications. We're at a very healthy point in our ability to process applications. So you give us something that's reasonable, we will work with you, we will get it approved. And what we're also seeing now is not just the ability to get approvals out the door, but to do it faster, right? And this certainly helps the companies get a better understanding in terms of what the expected time to approval will be, right? Get you a little bit more business certainty. We're taking our commitments very seriously. We knew we had to do a better job managing the applications. And so what you see here is really significant improvement over the time it takes to get sort of comparable numbers of applications approved. And certainly there's outliers, special cases here and there, but if you're submitting a typical type of product and you've done it right, this is the type of treatment and the type of timing that you can expect to get from the program. Supplements, right? The story of the application doesn't end with the approval. Right? We're going to continue to work on those applications. Right? This starts an entire new sort of chapter in our regulation of the product. Right? And so again, we're going to have to come together to work successfully through this process. And what you can see is a big increase in the number of submissions. And this is really due to two factors. And of course, immediately people are going to say, well, there's no fee for the prior approval supplements under GDUFA 2, and that's why people are submitting more. That's certainly part of it. But one of the things we've seen with record numbers of approvals, we're now generating record numbers of supplements. And we certainly, I think, all understand that the application that's newly approved, this first year or so, we tend to see a higher number of supplements. It's not that supplements ever stop from applicants, but I think we all know they're a little bit more intense shortly after they're approved. That's fine, that's understandable, and this makes sense. With more approvals, we're generating more prior approval supplements. This is also something that we need to understand when we're looking at the entire ANDA program. It's not just originals. We must also factor in the growing number of post-approval activities that are going on. And so what you see here is a combination of both the prior approval supplements and the changes being affected supplements, right? This number has gone up and up. It's enormous, right? We're closing in at 9,000 supplements last year. Think about that, right? Divide that by sort of the number of staff members that we have, and that becomes a staggering amount of work. So when we look at the supplements, again, we're trying to match the pace that's coming in. We just can't do that, right? It's enormous growth over the past few years, right? On the receipt side, we're trying to get as many out the door as we can, but certainly we're not able to match that growing trend, right? We don't have the capacity to match those. Be respectful when you submit your changes in. We will take it very seriously. We will work on them, but at the same time, I don't think anybody envisioned the volume that we're seeing here today. And so we are, as you can see from this slide, losing ground. Now certainly a number that we didn't show here with the complete responses that go out, right? We don't want to show that. We want these to be approved, right? And so we understand supplements are very important to you. Give us the data. Use those same tips we talked about, right? Read your audience. Give us the appropriate data. Demonstrate you know what's going on in the supplement. You can tie those supplement changes back to the original application, right? That becomes part of your story on the application, right? Here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's why it makes sense, and here's the proof. That's what we're looking for in this case. Then we'll shift and look at some tips. First, like we said, the story doesn't end there, right? Continue. This is essential. We are going to continue to work with you for the life of that product. And also, very important, the quality of your submissions doesn't end with the approval. Maintain that same high standard of quality. That's a key to us moving forward and allowing you to make those changes, right? And to carefully assess the nature of the change before determining which type of reporting mechanism is appropriate. If you give us a change that we think makes sense, but you submit it through the wrong classification, that slows us down and maybe forced to resubmit that the appropriate way, right? That's going to delay your ability to implement that change, right? And so take that just as serious as you took the original application. And then, of course, make the link, right? As part of telling the story, you've got to be able to link in. Here's why this change makes sense. Here's the part of the application that we're changing. Here's the reference. Here's why we can make this change successful and maintain sort of the high profile, right, and the high quality of this product through this change. And of course, we take these goals very seriously, right? There's a lot of effort on our end, right? There's a lot of reporting built into the GDUFA 2 program, right? We're proud of where we are. We know we're not perfect. We're continuing to fine-tune and improve the program. And we will give you reports, right? We're happy to show what's going on. We want there to be transparency, right? So you see a wide range of reports from monthly reports and some of the key statistics, a little bit expanded for the quarterly reports. And then, of course, there's an annual report to Congress where you'll see this data and many more data points about the program, right? And we also know if we can't meet the goals, we're going to have to explain the misses, right? And so we have to explain to Congress, Government Accountability Office, right, GAO. If we miss, they're expected to audit, and they're expected to audit even when we make the goals, right? They come in periodically and audit us, and so we know that's coming. We want to do a good job. We want to be able to focus our staff on the applications and not be distracted with some of these other activities. So if we're successful and you help us be successful, we can dedicate more and more of our efforts to moving the applications forward and not have sort of these sidebar distractions occurring. And so I want to go through a couple challenge questions, right? Does FDA want to refuse to receive an application? Anybody say yes? I hope not. No way. We don't want this. We need the applications to come in. That's our lifeblood. We can't help the public by making generic drugs available if we don't get the applications, and we can't file those applications. So we put a lot of effort into trying to make that program run as successfully as possible, right? The story of your application does not end with the approval, right? Hopefully people will walk away from that. Continue, right? That same effort, that same diligence on your application, bring that all the way through. A lot of times we see people try very hard to get the application approved, but then their post-approval changes are sloppy. Right? They've turned it over to different people. They can't link back to the original application. Know your application, know your story, be able to communicate that story to our post-approval team, right? And we're seeing more and more of these changes coming in, so it's even more important that you can help us manage this growing workload by giving us the right information and providing the appropriate references, data links, and connections back into the original submission to help us better navigate. So with that, I have some concluding remarks here. First, the ANDA program's in great shape, right? We've shown that we can process high volume applications. We've shown that if you give us quality applications, we can process them and bring them to approval very quickly, right? Seeing the fastest approval times in the whole GDUFA era going on right now, right? We're on it. We know what's going on. We know how to move the good applications forward. We're trying to help people understand the tips to build a better application. That allows us to move them forward. That allows you to get that approval forward. And most important, it's allowing the public to get the benefit of those applications, right? Pre-submission communications, those are increasing. Take advantage of this, right? That is a wonderful program. Right? If you're working on one of these novel products, more complex type of products, take advantage of that. If you have something different, it could be a more traditional product, but you want to do something a little different. Again, use this program, right? There's an opportunity to get information from us, but at the same time, make sure you're doing your homework, right? Don't ask general questions. Here's what we're thinking, here's why we're thinking, here's why we think this is supportable. Right? That's the type of pre-submission communication that's going to allow us to have a much better interaction and allow us to help you get that application pulled together to be successful. Then you're in a position, a better chance of being accepted, right? We've had some sort of expanded communications to help the success rate here grow We want that to increase, right? We want to file these applications. We need them filed. Take advantage, right? Do it right. Work with us. We'll get them filed. Take advantage of the within-cycle communications, right? We're seeing more and more communications, especially in that first cycle. In fact, we're seeing multiple rounds of communications from many of the disciplines. Take advantage of that, right? Give the team what they need, and that's going to help us get more first cycle approvals, right? And that's the ultimate goal with these activities, right? You've seen that we're exceeding our GDUFA 2 goals, right? We want that to work. We want it to be successful. We're putting pieces in place to make it successful. Everybody knows what's expected of them, right? Reviewers, the project managers, the management team, we're all pulling together to make this work. And the key, too, is it's people from all over the program, right? Pick an office that's supporting the ANDA program, they're on it. Everybody knows what's going on. We're all reading from the same script. We're all linked together to make this successful. And so I think we've certainly seen more of a comprehensive team effort in the more recent years than ever was within the program. And for somebody like me who's been in the ANDA program for a long time, it's wonderful now to say, hey, we've got a question over here. And we don't even have to explain to some of the other people around the agency who we are. I can remember calling people years ago, hey, I'm working on this generic application, right? We're stuck. I can't move forward with my ANDA until you answer this question. And you would get that timeout moment. What's an ANDA? Who are you? Where are you coming from? Right? We don't have that now. When we say we're working on an ANDA, right, people listen. They're responsive. They want us to be successful. They're part of our team, right? There's not a we and a they. We're all part of this larger ANDA team. And so that has been working very successful, and having the user fee program, I think, has really tied us all together to be on the same page, right? The assessment time with us is dropping, right? The goals matter. I know they matter to you. They matter to us, too. And nothing helps sort of generate people working in sync than having those goal dates in place, right? We need them. You need them for business certainty. That's working. That's successful, right? We've done, it's a struggle. There's a lot of sweat and effort to get the application done on time, but we're doing that, right? It's a very brisk pace for us to get these applications done. But it's happening, and it's happening successfully. And of course, with that success, the approval times are dropping, right? That's wonderful. That's a great metric. It's certainly one of many metrics, but we know this is one that gets a lot of attention. That's great, right? It's also happening better on the post-approval side, right? All of these show that it is a great time to submit an application into the generic program. We're taking them very seriously. We're on it, and things are happening, right? And we appreciate all of the efforts and support. And at this point, Jeff will sort of pause here.